Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connection, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready? Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Back to Basics, Reconnecting to the Essence of You. My guest today is Lori Kingsley. She's an artist and founder of Sweet Life by Lori. Following decades in the fashion and beauty industry, she decided to pursue her true passion and found her own company called Sweet Life by Lori. Hello, and welcome to Back to Basics.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm very excited about, I think, fashion, beauty, and all those things are always something that it's good to talk about. For my male audience, I know deep down they also like to be fashionable and all that. They maybe not be allowed to be as open on that as women. But in any case, so tell us. I know you have a fascinating background. You work for big companies like L'Oréal, to name one of them, big corporate career. But I'm always curious to know if I have the feeling that love for fashion started early. So tell us a little bit about, your younger years. What were you passionate about? What did you dream of becoming of when you grew up?
Yeah, sure. And again, thank you so much for having me. And you're right. My love of fashion started really as early as I can remember. My dad was in the garment center. He was sort of my hero. He became sort of my mentor. I just always loved shopping with him. I loved going into his showroom, and I just knew very early on I wanted to follow in my dad's footsteps. So that was sort of ingrained in me from a very, very early age. And so I always had my eye on the fashion world. I used to love to look at magazines, and I used to love to just see what was happening in the world and trends and all of that. And so I had my sights set on that world from a very, very early age.
That's fascinating. Well, you see, I started saying that my male audience have a fashion, and how interesting that it was your dad, not your mom, which you might have expected.
Yes.
So I'm curious, any misconceptions or things that you saw in your dad being the man and being in the fashion industry? Any misconceptions or I don't know, takeaways that you have from having your dad as a mentor in an industry that usually, there's many male fashion designers as well, but in terms of girls dreaming of, I think it's more of the girls that dream of getting into that industry than the men.
Yeah, my dad was a buyer early on in his career. He worked for a department store. That's actually where he met my mother. My mother was working in the department store as well.
That's convenient.
He was in human resources, and he was a children's wear buyer. And that's where they met. They met at the department store. So I guess I was destined, to follow this path. But it was really my dad who was very interested in more in terms of trend and what was happening. And although my mother always liked to dress nice, she was more conservative and not always, concerned about what was happening and trends and all of that. But it was my dad who always had his eye on, what was happening, what the trends were. We were always shopping the stores and, getting inspiration and looking, at different things. And I really, really enjoyed spending my time with him and learning, about what he looks for and how things should fit. And I was also his model as well. He would have me try on, different things. He eventually evolved from children's wear into women's outerwear. So I was trying on coats, and he would always kind of raise the shoulders and have me turn around and look and see how the garments fit. And he would teach me the different silhouettes and the collars, a peak lapel, a shawl collar, a notch collar, and all of that kind of thing. And I just loved spending time with him, and I loved being part of that world.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It sounds so such an interesting dynamics. And I mean, I'm somebody that has worked with my dad also, and it's just like I always tell people, like that's the best thing if you can have similar alignment in the job in your job, either as a mentor or working together or something. It works is the best gift ever because it's like you get that extra time with the people you love the most. So
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And my dad was really always my hero. So just as you said, having that bond and getting to spend all of that special time together was, you know,
yeah, that's
just
good. Some
priceless.
people, yeah, some people I think shy away from working with family, like they get it, or even having that kind of relationship in terms of mentoring, and they think it's either boring or will be very difficult. And sometimes I say they don't realize how powerful it is if you can, make it work or align or and it's just a blessing. So, well, that was helpful for you to have your eyes set. So when you make your career decision in terms of what you study, I read somewhere that you were raised in New York and this is where you went to school.
Yeah, so I was actually born in Queens, and then my family moved to Long Island when I was 4 years old. So I spent the majority of my growing up years on Long Island. But I knew from very early on, I had my eyes set on the Fashion Institute of Technology. That was the school I wanted to go to. And I wanted to know everything about it. I actually went on a tour of FIT when I was in ninth grade just to kind of get a feel. I already knew that that's where I wanted to go, but I couldn't wait to get there and really learn more about what they offered. And then in high school, I actually spoke to my guidance counselor and I asked them if there was any way that I could actually graduate high school early so that I could get to FIT sooner.
Oh, wow.
And I
Wow,
was
wow, wow.
actually able to double up on math and English classes. And I graduated at the end of 11th grade with all of my credits and everything else. And
Wow.
FIT was actually the only one college that I applied to, which
Wow.
it's funny when I say that now because I have two children. One just graduated college about 2 years ago, and my daughter's about to graduate. And
Wow.
nowadays,
Congrats.
kids are applying to between 10 and 20 schools when they're looking to go to college. I know my kids did the same thing. And, to think back that I applied to one school, there was no plan B. That was the school I wanted to go to. I had my sights set on that, and that was the only place I applied.
I love that comment because, and I digress this a little bit from your journey, but that point, because I have so many friends that are on that process. And I sometimes, me and my husband talk about how difficult it is when you have so many options, that having too many options can actually mess you up.
Yeah.
And I believe that this is something that we're living right now, in many aspects, like going to the supermarket and having a million brands, right? I come from
Yeah.
Venezuela, so we had two cereals to choose from. Now it's getting, in Latin America, everywhere is getting better. But this is the one thing with the US that it was always, every time you travel here and you see so many options, on one end is good, but on the other side, it's like you don't know what to choose. So
Yeah, it gets confusing.
you paralyze. So I think that it's great that yes, when you have less options or you know exactly what you want, you pick one and that's what you go for. And almost like failure is not an option, so to
Yeah.
speak.
That was my mindset. There, like I said, there was no plan B. That was where I wanted to go to school. I knew very early on I wanted to be in the heart of New York City, where I had the energy of the city. And, I loved being in the city and I loved getting inspiration from all different types of things, from the culture, from the street fashion. I love musical theater. Like I love to see performances and the costumes and the stage set designs. And for me, it was so much eye candy. Like I just loved always, seeing things in the city that I wasn't seeing, on Long Island. I really like to be in the heart of Manhattan.
Well, so far this story is going as you probably have done things that people dream about it, like fashion, New York, all the things you've described as a young girl. So you graduate and you have mentioned you work for big brands,
Mm-hmm.
a very successful corporate career. So before we move into Sweet Life by Lori, which of course I want to know everything about and what you're doing now. what can you share about those corporate years working for top brands in terms of experience, but also takeaway lessons for people that, maybe dream about that career path? I'm sure there was a lot of good, but also other things that maybe people don't even think about when they pursue that similar trajectory.
Yes, during my second year at FIT, I had the opportunity to do an internship. And at that time, I did my internship with Donna Karan, who was always one of my most favorite designers. I was in the public relations office, and it originally started out, it was a 1-month program as part of my schooling to get real life job experience. And I was fortunate enough to be with Donna Karan, my favorite designer. But it worked out really well, and they actually asked me to stay on beyond the internship. So it was a phenomenal experience to be able to see firsthand how this designer, who I admired so much, like what her day-to-day was like, on a regular day versus when she was preparing to do a fashion show, where she would spend a few days in a row in the design room, getting ready, preparing, and she's such a master of her craft and the attention to detail, and that feeling when your name is on something and what that means to you and to me, and it's such a personal thing when you have your name branded on whatever it is that you're representing or that you're behind. It is personal. Of course, it's business, but it does feel personal when your name is on something. And, she was always so meticulous with her design and her work and her dedication to getting it as perfect as it could be. And I remember she said, and it stuck with me, this quote, that you're never ready, you just run out of time. You perfect and you perfect and you perfect and you perfect, and then it's showtime. Like you run out of time. And it was always perfect. As far as everybody else was concerned,
Yeah.
It was always perfect. Everyone else looked at it like it was truly, they were works of art, So that was really amazing to get to witness firsthand somebody that I admired so much. And, to see the work ethic and to see what it takes, to be able to put on a production like that or to produce a line of clothing and, the ins and outs of that. I got to see a lot of the behind the scenes, which was an incredible experience.
That sounds fantastic for sure. And so, and that was, how you got started and all that. So at some point, and I love to explore this with every guest. It's a, successful corporate career, killing it. And then at some point there's apparently for many, it's like pursuing passion project or a passion company or founding your own thing. How was that process for you when you had to make that change? Was it something specific that made you jump from that career into creating Sweet Life by Lori? Or I always try to or like to identify what the signs or symptoms were so that anybody out there listening to similar things or experiencing the same know that they're probably being given the cue to act on and promote change in their lives.
Yeah. So just going back, after I worked for Donna Karan, I kind of morphed into the beauty industry after many years in fashion. Worked for Donna Karan. I was a fashion consultant for many years, and then went on to the beauty industry. So I've always been surrounded by very creative, artistic people. And that's always where I have felt most at home. Working with creative people, artistic people, a certain type of energy that I always found, I found my people when I found these creative environments. And I had many, many good years in the corporate world, working for fashion and beauty companies alike. For me, a turning point really came at the beginning of the pandemic. I know that was such a difficult time for all of us at the beginning of 2020. And at the time, I was working for a skincare company that was a medical grade skincare company, unlike some of the other cosmetic companies that I work for, where I was working in the luxury market with very creative people, hairdressers that would work on, fashion shows and magazines, that were very artistic. I went more into a medical grade skincare company. So my day to day was very different than being surrounded in a creative world. So I was going in and out of a lot of medical buildings to meet with doctors and cosmetic surgeons, plastic surgeons, things of that nature. And although the products that I was working with were wonderful and effective, my day-to-day felt very different. And I felt sort of removed from my creative roots. So at the beginning of the pandemic, very sadly and tragically, I lost both my mother and father to COVID.
Oh,
and
so
that
sorry.
was devastating beyond measure. It was unexpected. It was incredibly tragic. And something like that really makes you take a look at how you're living your life. And although I always believed, we have to be grateful for every single day that we're given. And, I keep a gratitude journal, and it's the first thing I do every day is, express what I'm grateful for. And it could be the simplest thing to some amazing big things that are happening in my life. But I stop every morning and I'm just grateful I woke up. I'm grateful I have the gift of another day. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful I'm healthy. I'm grateful the sun is out. Whatever it is, I take time in the morning to be grateful. Losing my mother and father, it made me look at my life even more differently, like how I'm spending every single day, because although it's cliche and you hear all the time, life is so short, life is so precious. It's really true when you hear, none of us know how much time we have. We never know if we get tomorrow. We never know if we're going to see our loved ones again, if we're going to speak with them again. That's why people say what you want to say, do what you want to do. Do not wait. Do not wait to chase your dreams. Do not wait to have those conversations with people, and tell people how you feel. Tell people you love them often. Hug them as much as you can. Do all the things, because we just never know. I never, ever could have known that the last time I saw my mom and dad was going to be the last time, and I'm grateful that I had such an incredible relationship with both of them. They were really my best friends on earth. And, I have no regrets. There was nothing left unsaid. So I'm very fortunate and very blessed that I had that type of relationship with them. But it is so true when they say that you don't know what tomorrow brings. And at that time in my life, when I was working, for this medical grade skincare company, I really started feeling disconnected from a part of myself. And after losing them both, I remember so clearly telling my husband that I just don't want to spend one more day of my life doing something that I don't absolutely love, because life is just so short and we don't know what tomorrow brings. And at that moment, I wasn't exactly sure what the next step was going to be, but I knew it was going to be something creative, and I knew that it wasn't going to be what I was doing. So I left my job. And I actually started a chocolate business, which was a way that I could create beautiful things that I could share with people to help make life sweeter, because that was the mission in calling my company Sweet Life. It wasn't just about chocolate, but it was about celebrating life every day and knowing that we all deserve to live a sweet life. And that was really what my parents taught me. It was really sort of an homage to them and the way that they lived. They were very happily married. They had a lot of fun. They really believed in living fully and living joyfully. And that was what they taught me. And I couldn't think of a better name for my company than Sweet Life.
I love it. I love it. I think it's fantastic in everything that you're saying. And thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry about your parents. It's like so many of these stories. But I think, listening to you, I still have my parents alive, thank God, and they're 91 and 87. So getting to a
God
point where
bless.
you realize every day it's a blessing, even more so than everything you say. Like it can be me that's missing tomorrow, not them. I mean,
Yeah,
you really know that you
right,
don't know.
right.
But hearing you say it, it's so important to say, like, I have the same feeling, like I tell them as much as I can, but also realizing that every interruption, it's an opportunity to potentially have regrets in how we interact with each other, right? Like when
Yes.
we are not paying attention, we're not fully present, we're not, or we say nasty things to each other, the people we love most, because I always say, why are we the kindest with strangers? And then people in their own families present the worst versions of them, right? So
Yeah.
many aspects. So it's a great reminder what you share. So thank you for that. And so yeah, so chocolate. It's it. I
Yeah.
mean, I know that you say you gave a great explanation, but did you do you have a passion for chocolate, or is it like, or you were more like analyzing trends and saying where there's a good feed and good product or things that in how you created Sweet Life by Lori? Like how did you put together like that the offering itself?
Right. So it happened where when I had decided I wanted to leave my job, and then I had an opportunity. I actually made a gift for somebody, and it was a gift all chocolate, all different types of chocolate treats, from chocolate covered pretzels and s'mores and chocolate covered Oreos and all different kinds of things. And the way I packaged it and created it, my husband looked at it and just said, like, that's really amazing. Like, you can't really buy that in a store anywhere. Like, and it was customized and everything. And in that moment, I just said, this is what I'm going to do. Like, I love this. And the person that received it loved it. And I started posting pictures of it. And then it was 2 weeks before Halloween when this happened. So I had Halloween and Thanksgiving and all the holidays ahead of me. And I just started making candy. And at that time, everything was locked down and there were no get-togethers and no parties, and people were all isolated in their own homes. And it was a way that it could bring joy and happiness to people when people couldn't gather. So people would drop off chocolate for people or send chocolate to people. I was shipping chocolate all over the country. So
Wow,
it was a
that's
great thing.
amazing.
And people were doing drive-by graduations and drive-by barn bat mitzvahs and sweet 16s and birthday parties. Everything either was remote or it was outdoors. And so I was individually packaging chocolate treats that people were giving out at these
That's
drive-by
amazing.
parties. And even these hot cocoa bombs became a very big trend a few years ago. And I sort of mastered the hot cocoa bomb and offered many different varieties. And people were ordering 12 packs and 6 packs and giving them out as gifts. And like I said, dropping them off for people. And it was something simple people could do with their kids on a Friday night or on a weekend that was just fun to do at home, something special, again, that made life a little bit sweeter. And, I'm all about celebrating life, celebrating every day, and sort of sharing the love and little bits of happiness as often as possible, because I really believe that, again, we all deserve to live a sweet life, and that we really should, really think about and acknowledge the little things, because that was something my parents taught me also, that the little things in life are really the big things. And, those priceless things, the things that money can't buy, are really the big things. And, that's really so ingrained in who I am as a person, those little thoughtful things that I so appreciate when I see them. And they're things that I do in my own life, for my family and friends, because it's those little things. They don't have to cost a lot of money. They're just acts of kindness and acts of thoughtfulness that are everything. Letting people know that they're seen, letting people know that they matter, letting people know that you love them. All of those things, to me, make up the most amazing parts of life. And
Yes.
I wanted to create something that celebrated that. So my chocolate was my first venture away from the corporate world and a way to share beautiful, sweet things with as many people as possible to help make their everyday plus their milestones and special occasions more sweet and more beautiful, to make beautiful things for them according to what they wanted. Everything was custom made for each client of mine. So whatever colors they wanted, if they had certain pictures of things that they wanted on the chocolates, I was able to do that for them. Corporate gifts, like I said, Sweet 16's bar mitzvah logos that were designed specifically for them, and I continued even as we came out of quarantine, I continued with the chocolates, and then people started gathering again and hosting parties and events again. So everything from, small gifts to events, larger scale events I was doing all over the country. So that was sort of my first foray into the sweet life. And then that evolved wanting to show my art and work in a different format. I was always very fascinated with resin, and I really wanted to learn how to work with resin. There's something very magical about the translucent quality of it and how you can sort of suspend things in time encased in something that you can have forever, like a keepsake or a time capsule that you could always have. And I started working with resin. I sort of did a pivot and started expressing my creativity in a new way that was everlasting, as opposed to something that I created that was then eaten. I'm now creating works of art that people can have forever.
Wow, that's incredible. And the thing that comes to mind to me, but obviously probably to others listening to this, is like, it sounded like you started, I'm going to do this, and then I'm doing corporate events, catered. And so that gap into, well, but did you know how to do all that? Or was somebody helping you? Like, because people, they're going to find a reason why, well, it worked for her, it's not going to work for me because maybe I don't know how to put a logo on a chocolate, or I don't know how to do all these things. Were you faced with any of those issues in terms of your abilities to actually do something that you knew how to do it, but then you grew it and now you even pivot and pursue, say, well, I'm artistic, but I don't even know where to start and how I start doing that. So what would be your advice in terms of having somebody that's kind of there, has a talent, but they don't really know how to take it from that one bag of chocolate, that one piece of art to like something bigger?
First of all, thank you for that question. It's a really great question. I am self-taught. So every single creative endeavor that I embark on, I have never had anyone in person teach me anything. So I am self-taught. And because of the age that we live in, there is so much available to us, so much information that you can find online, that you can research. YouTube became my classroom, sort of, watching endless videos on how to create certain things, researching, how do I do this? Oh, I have this idea that I want to be able to customize chocolate covered Oreos for people, but I've never done that before, and I don't know how to do that, and I don't know anyone that does that. So I started researching how to do it, and then I found out the steps I needed to take. I needed an edible printer. And then I had to figure out, well, what goes in the printer and how do I set up, these images to be able to print them the right size for the cookies. The thing I have to say is that you have to be okay with failing. You have to be okay to try something and know that you might fail. And I failed so many times, and I failed often. But it's part of the process. And what's really important is that you could watch 100 videos on how to do something, and you'll get a little something out of each one, but you will never truly learn how to do it until you actually do it. Mm-hmm. And I've learned that time and time again where I wanted to try something and I watched so many people do it. And then I went to try to attempt it on my own, and I learned so much about what not to do or how to do it the same way or better. But you don't really learn how until you actually physically do it. And you have to be okay with failing. You have to know that it might not always work out, but then you know what to do different next time, and you evolve. And I made so many mistakes. But I was trying. And I think that's the big thing. If you have a dream that's planted in your heart, I really believe it's in your heart for a reason. And be careful who you share that dream with, because not everybody will get it. And that's okay, because it wasn't planted in their heart. It was planted in your heart. So if it's in your heart, it's in your heart for a reason, and hold on to that and nurture it and work on it, and know that you're going to fail along the way, and that's okay. But if you have a vision for yourself and for your life, something that calls to you, my advice is follow that and listen to that. And just know that as you learn things along the way and you research things and you get information, physically do it, try it, and then you'll adapt and you'll say, oh, I'm never going to do that again, or oh, that was a big mistake. I had so many of those things. But with each experience you learn and you grow, and that's the most important thing, because so many people don't ever have the courage to try. It's easier not to try. But if you have a dream in your heart, the pain of regret of never even trying, to me, is the worst kind. To think, what would have happened if, what would have happened if I tried? Like, I can't live with that. And I know, I'm sure there are people listening that have a dream in their heart. I was a very big fan of Dr. Wayne Dyer. For your listeners that know him, one of my favorite, I have two favorite pieces of advice or teachings from Dr. Wayne Dyer. One of them is, don't die with your music still in you. And that gives me chills even now when I say it.
Yeah, that's a powerful one.
I do have chills right now. Don't die with your music still in you. Play your music. Even if you hit the wrong notes, play your music and live that dream. And one of my other favorite pieces of or learnings or teachings from him is, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So that's another one of my gems from Dr. Wayne Dyer that I really value. I value those two teachings from him a lot. But I really think it was a great question that you asked, because I didn't know how to do any of this when I started either. And you can learn, you can play. It's okay to play, and it's okay to have it not work out. The world isn't going to fall apart. You just, make changes and adapt. But don't be afraid to play, and don't be afraid to try.
I love all that answer. I knew you belonged back to basics. That's the very reason why this podcast exists, so that if somebody, I know I'm going to get a text or a message. I heard your episode with Lori. That's the nudge I needed. I've gotten so many of those since I started the podcast, which to me is like my passion project into, if we can inspire one person to pursue, to play the music, you're right, and not to go without having expressed it and see what happens. That's so powerful. And I think for whatever reason, society, the way we live, fear dominates, our actions, and we really self-sabotage ourselves.
100%.
In thinking, and the other biggest thing, and I don't know how you feel about this, is like, well, that all sounds good, but I'm not going to make any money. I have to pay the bills. That, to me, that's the one that people go to, because it's a hard one to argue. You do have to pay your bills.
Yes.
So, whenever you want to encourage somebody and they go there, it's like, well, yeah, that's for sure. But there's always my take, and I would love to hear yours, is always, there's one little thing that you can do about that thing in your heart that you can do it while paying the bills, while still having a job, even if it's a very small one.
100%. I think, don't quit your job. If, like you said, we all have, rent, mortgages, expenses, all of that. We have to pay our bills. But if you can find time in your day that's just for you to pursue this passion, whether it's in your evenings or you get up a little earlier or your weekends or whatever free time that you have. I watched a podcast recently that really broke down like how many hours a week we all have that we're awake. And even if we're working 8 hours a day, and if we're sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night, there's still this chunk of time every single day that we all have. And the one thing, we all get 24 hours a day. And there are people out there in the world making certain things happen, but nobody has more time in a day than anyone else. We all get the same 24 hours. It's just, how are we using that time? So yes, if you have a job currently that you're in that's affording you to pay your bills and do all the things you need to do, wonderful. And if you have this calling and this desire to do something else or to try something else, start by spending a couple of hours, whether it's a day, a week, whatever your lifestyle right now will afford you the opportunity to do. Start dabbling in that thing that's calling to you. If it's an hour a day, if it's an hour every other day, whatever time you can find and carve out for the dream, find that time and start something on it. Even if you start watching a few videos on how to do something, or you look up, a podcast about it, or whatever it is, start finding pockets of time in the middle of your regular life, your job, your 9 to 5, whatever it is that you're doing. Find and carve out those pockets of time to work on the dream without putting yourself and your livelihood in jeopardy, of course. Do it responsibly. But I think a switch happens for us in our mindset when we take action. We could think about going to the gym forever. Oh, I need to get to the gym. Oh, I need to start working out again, or whatever that thing is. But until we actually go and do it, even if it's for a half hour, once we take that step and we go that next day and we do it, something shifts in our mindset, because now we're having a different conversation in our head. It's not, oh, I need to do that. It's, I did it. It's a check off the list. I did it. It's not just thinking about doing it. It's taking action. And the action starts you on a trajectory that can lead to other things. So for all the people wondering, I don't know how to even begin. I have this job. I can't just quit my job and work on my dream full time. So many people can't do that. So think about what you can do right now that starts you on the path of the dream without jeopardizing where you're at right now.
Well, thanks for that. I think that definitely that's going to resonate with everybody. So I always love to give a chance to any guest, of course, to talk about it. Have we not discussed anything that you have going on in your new venture that excites you, anything that you want to share? Of course, your webpage will be on the show notes, and how to contact you, how to follow you. Anything else that we haven't touched upon that you would like to share?
Yeah, I would thank you. And I would just love to tell your guests that my resin art is what I'm doing now full time. I launched my website right before Thanksgiving, and I know you're going to have it in the show notes. It's something that was one of the conversations I was having in my mind about, wanting to have a website so that I can share my art with the world. And, I had never built a website before, so that was a process. So my website is now, it's out there. My art is out there in the world. I'm doing some exciting things. I recently partnered with a curated luxury gift shop on Long Island. It's called Code Blue. And my wall art is actually showcased at the store. We're having sort of an art show meet and greet next week that I'm looking very forward to. But on a bigger picture, like we touched on before, I think when we have the opportunity to share love and share kindness with people and sort of sprinkle a little bit of love into the world and into the lives of the people that are close to us. I love when we take the opportunities to do those things. And I make gifts and art that help sort of lift the mood or the energy in whatever space my stuff is placed in, so everything from smaller gifts to art that you hang on the wall, it is always designed with an intention that whoever sees it is going to just immediately feel happier, uplifted. The pieces are somewhat nostalgic because I actually incorporate real candy into my artwork. So I went from making chocolate candy
that's amazing,
to actually having real candy into my artwork, into my art. So I have something right here, which is like a piece of my artwork, which features all kinds of nostalgic candy. And then I do functional pieces like this, where this is actually a candy dish. So you have a piece like this on a coffee table or a kitchen island to put your favorite candies in or your keys. And it makes people smile. It just lights up a room. It's fun. It's a conversation piece. And then my little paperweight also is something that it's filled with sprinkles. It's a little puffy heart. And again, the feeling behind it is just to sprinkle a little love everywhere. So it's called the Big Little Heart. And again, for a desk, I love giving these out. I love sharing the love with as many people as possible. And it's just a great, fun way to sprinkle love wherever you can. So it's just been an amazing journey for me, how I've sort of evolved from where I was to where I am now, and expressing my creativity in a new way, creating pieces that make people smile, that uplift energy, that are all about love and happiness. And my signature is I actually put a physical heart in every piece of wall art that I do as a symbol of the love that's literally poured into everything that I do that I want to share with everybody.
That's beautiful. I think it's really inspiring, your entire journey. And, the last question, as always, Lori, is what makes Lori tick? What is the one thing that helps you connect? I imagine art. I don't want to give away your own answer, but is there anything else that resources your soul?
Oh, that is a phenomenal question. Music and art. I love the human voice. So I love listening to like beautiful singers. And I mentioned earlier, I'm a huge fan of musical theater. Yes. So there's something about watching either a live performance of a beautiful voice or a recorded version of, whether it's a concert, or there's something about the way a beautiful voice moves me, that captivates me, that inspires me, that makes me feel so alive, that I just love. I love live theater, live performance, seeing people bare their soul in front of you through whether it's acting or singing and movement and dance. There's something about that, being in that energy of a live performance that is very inspirational for me. When you get to see a piece of somebody's soul like that.
Powerful, very powerful, Lori. Well, I want to thank you. You have an amazing story. Thanks for sharing it with our audience. Thanks for giving us a little bit a call to action to take a little step into anything your heart desires. And I am not surprised you're doing so well and that you're putting beautiful art into the world to inspire others.
Oh, thank you so very much.
Thank you, everybody. And thanks for tuning in to Back to Basics. I hope you enjoyed. Please rate and review if you enjoyed it and help us get the word out. Take care.
You've been listening to Back to Basics. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you haven't yet, subscribe, Rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcast or any of your favorite streaming platforms. This is the best gift you can give us. Join me next week for another Back to Basics conversation. And if you want to find out about other exciting things I'm working on, visit leticialatino.com. Thank you, and until the next time.